Hey everybody, Greg here, and today is Monday, September 11, 2017. This is a short video about my music production process and the software that I use, which is GarageBand from Apple. There are a variety of ways to use GarageBand. You can use it on your iPhone, your iPad. You can use it with full-size computer, laptop computer. The versions for what's called OS 10 and at this point OS 11, those are a little bit different. So what I'm going to be showing you here, they appear the same, but there are a few differences. So what I'm going to be showing you here is just the GarageBand on the iPad, and here you can see I've brought up the keyboard feature. Some of the instrument interfaces do not have a keyboard. Of course, drums, guitar, etc. The interface changes based on what instrument you're playing digitally. And for that reason, the touch interface is nice. I like a full-size keyboard. My background is in piano and in playing keyboard, so that's familiar to me, but I also like the touch sensitivity of this iPad screen. It makes it possible to, hit notes with various degrees of intensity and force, so you can get louder and softer playing just by how hard you're tapping on those keys on the screen here. And similarly with the guitar and with other instruments, the touch sensitivity is in place, so you can get those variations of tone and nuances that you might have. It's pretty close to being, an acoustic kind of sound as best as possible. Now, the reason I have this flute here, this is a Lakota flute. The reason I'm including this in the video is because, if you think about music, it's sort of like creating a recipe, or making a meal, making an entree, where you would choose your ingredients and then either using a recipe or making it from scratch, just creating a recipe on your own. Now, the comparison there with music is you can either play music from sheet music, a song that somebody else has written, and you're just going to play it, or you can create your own music improvisationally. And from that foundation then, as you're building music in the multi-track system, you're layering down drums, percussion for your rhythm, and multiple tracks of different instruments and sounds and things like that. Well, there is a level of music creation on the iPad where you're essentially using, here I'll just show you, you tap on this plus symbol for a new song, and if you use what's called the here live loops, you're creating music, but the music is based on smaller loops of sound. So here I'll just give you an idea of how this works. And these smaller loops of music, percussion and synthesizer and that kind of thing, have already been created for you. So there really is your one step. It's almost like you're working with an orchestra of people who've already created these little bits of music and you're throwing it together. So that part of it is a creative process and it's unique. But the subtle nuances will not be unique to you because there will be other people using these same loops, and eventually you'll hear like, oh, I've heard that, little synthesizer thing going on in somebody else's music. So you lose some of that uniqueness when you use these loops, but it also really helps with the process, or I should say, speeds it up. It's sort of like computer programming where you say, oh, I want my program to show the time in the upper right corner. I want there to be a clock there or a calculator down here. Well, instead of starting from scratch and writing up like 1,000 lines of code to create a calculator or a watch or a clock, you just bring those modules in. So you click and drag and drop, and now your program has the time, or your program has a calculator. You didn't program that calculator, but you did design maybe what color it is and how big it is and where it's located on the screen. So that's where computer programming is today. people are mostly working with these larger modules that they're moving around and then customizing some core element of the software. So similarly, like, you buy a recipe that's already in a box, a mix, and you get that at the store, you come home, you add an egg, you add some milk, whatever, but basically most of that recipe was already put together for you. The ingredients were already assembled and measured and everything else. So there are varying degrees of complexity and personalization and uniqueness that you can have for your music. So here I'm working with not, in this example, with this grid, I'm not really working with specific instruments. I'm working with loops that were created using certain synthesizers or instrument sounds. So you can just hear. So where the uniqueness and personalization comes in with this is that you can pick different boxes on this grid. So I might pick this sound here, and this is going to keep looping, and then I'll pick this one over here, and this one here. So you can start mixing up those loops in a way that begins to be pretty unique. I mean, there may be some sounds in there that somebody might say, hey, I heard that before, but the whole mix of it and the combinations you choose are really infinite. And what happens is, for musicians, unless you're good as, unless you're a skilled drummer and a skilled guitarist and a skilled keyboardist and a skilled vocalist, and skilled at playing the flute or whatever, unless you can play every instrument in the band, you're probably gonna, in your own personal recording, you're gonna lay down some tracks that are, that are just not your unique performance, right? They're royalty free, essentially. They're built into the software, and you can use those. But basically, somebody might say, "Hey, I've heard that drum solo before," or something. So, and it's time consuming. If you want, you can use the digital interface. You may not physically have a drum set, but you can use the digital interface for the drums. You can go in and use a drum pad, and start putting together, recording your own track of unique, drum track for yourself. And start with that, and start with the next layer, maybe a bass guitar, and eventually you'll have, a full song that's completely you. Now you didn't play those instruments physically, but at least you played and composed each track of your recording in these unique instruments. And so if you can't physically play the bass guitar, at least you can, come in here. There's some automation you can do. Bring the volume up here a little bit. So with that automation, you can get a little help with how the bass is going to go, and there's some variations of that. Or if you want to, you can go back to just playing the notes on your own. Like that. So it's just how deep you want to get into it. Or you can skip that altogether, and you can say, hey, I want to work with, predefined loops for most of it, and then maybe create some of the melody or whatever. So anyway, that's a long introduction to explain those varying things. And, there are people who will just record audio, into their track. So here's audio recorder. And I can go in and choose instrument and set that down. And if I want to use this flute, I can do that. So I can just press record. So that was it. Now that is recording using the microphone. So that background clicking noise that you heard, which is the metronome there, keeping time, that's going to come through in this recording when I play it. Sounds kind of like wood blocks or whatever, but I can tap on that metronome and turn that off. So if I want, I can go back. I'm going to re-record that track. Tap on instrument, make sure the metronome's off. There'll be a visual metronome so I can keep time and know when to start. And for some reason I'm still getting the metronome sound. Here we go, metronome count in. I'm going to use the visual count in and not have any other sounds. There we go, and there's a metronome volume level. So if I was recording with an electric guitar or some sort of like a digital keyboard, that sound obviously wouldn't get recorded. It's not being recorded with microphones using the iPad. In this case, I'm recording with an audio acoustic, instrument here, so I want to make sure that clicking of the metronome isn't heard. So now there's going to be a visual metronome. So that was just up in the upper right corner with a little wrench are the settings. Let's go ahead and try that again. Okay, so I don't know if you've seen people make videos before where there are a lot of cuts in the video. It's apparent that they've done like 20 different takes. They're kind of putting their own words together, so they leave out things like or ah or whatever, or just something they've said that wasn't perfect and they figure, oh, I'm just going to edit that out. Well, anyway, you can play, long uncut periods of, sections of music. Or you can play little snippets like I did there. If you're worried, you're going to get partway into this thing and then make a mistake, you can create your own little loops essentially, and then go in there and edit that up. So let me play back what I have so far. Now you notice the first part of that is just blank noise. So I'm going to go in. I can define that I want to delete the initial part of that. And I can say, whoops, bring that playhead back a little bit. And split, that's what I want. And then I'm going to split right there and grab just the initial portion of that. Now you can see how this can become a little bit tedious, and it's very detail oriented, and there have been times when I've been composing music and I get down to the actual level of each little note and I'll bump up something up or down or change the length of a note. I've spent hours on composition doing those things, but depending on what you're trying to put together, you may or may not want that. So here's this little segment though, trimmed up a little bit. So I could try to play that over and over if that's sort of my background riff or whatever. Play that over and over, or I could just copy that. I'm pleased with how that came out, and then I can just sort of paste it in right here, and then it's the effect of me playing that over and over. So here we go. So I do copy and make sure the playhead's in a good spot here, and I'll do paste and I'll just bring those together, and now let's hear what that sounds like. Now actually there's a little bit too much of a lag there. I can zoom into this, get a little more precise. I want that next loop to play right after the first one finishes. So I can check that out. Let's go back a little bit, and play that from the middle. That's perfect. That's right on the beat. I want that to start there. Now, if I get two of them lined up just how I want, well, then I can select both of them. And I know this one continues to the following one, which is the right, timing. So I can go ahead and just select both and, duplicate those across or whatever I want to do. Let me go ahead and just copy this over a couple more times and paste it. But you can see how using your own playing can be a little more time consuming, because you're going to go in at every level with every instrument and lay down those tracks. So that's just the first track. Now I'm going to put in, let's say I want some percussion, or maybe a world instrument. Let's try that. Okay, that might work. So I'm going to rewind, and I'm going to go ahead and record this instrument. So now I have that other instrument sound coming in. Maybe I'll add some percussion now. Let's go over to drums. Now I could put in a drum loop, but I'm not sure if it's going to fit with what I'm doing. So I know that would be good, having like a maraca sound in there. I'd probably want to be bringing that in right about when that secondary instrument starts. So I'll press record, and what I'm going to hear is this whole song from the beginning, and I'll wait with that percussion until I get to that second track. There we go. So now we have the makings of a song. And then I might want to come in and do a little solo with the keyboard. Instead of a grand piano, I might want something like a synthesizer. But let's go ahead and jump to the keyboard here. And let me choose, let's see, Alchemy Synth. There's something good. So I can change the synthesizer sound. I'm going to turn this around. Yeah, maybe synthesizer isn't what I want, because I'm working with kind of acoustic instruments. So I'm going to jump back to instruments and go with something else. I think I'll pick a stringed instrument. I'm going to go with the guitar. Now on most of these instruments, you can get a little help from the software, essentially. Strum a chord, pick a string, or go a little bit more automated. So if you're not comfortable with, picking those strings or figuring out what chords to play or whatever, once you're in the right key, you can just tap on any of these bars and it will strum. And there are 4 different variations of what kind of strumming it can do, picking essentially. So a lot of varieties there, but for what I'm doing, I want it to sound a little bit more raw and authentic here. So there we go. And instead of chords, I'm going to choose notes. So if I go from this chord level, which is a little more fixed, and I go to note level, I can get a little bit more play out of those notes, just like as if it was a real guitar. Okay, so let's go back, rewind, push record. as I was listening to that, I didn't play just because I was kind of getting a sense of what I want to play. So I think. Okay. Yeah, this that was not right. Okay, try once again. Okay, I think that's what it is. Now I'm less familiar with the layout of a guitar and how that's going to line up with the flute and this other thing going on, but you know, that's where I had to practice that a little bit. Somebody who plays the guitar a lot would know, oh yeah, that I know that note, and that's this, just touch it right there. So let me give this another try. There, that wasn't too bad. So let's play that back now. So from there I could, you get the idea, multiple layers of music. Now it's really tempting though to you know, to go ahead and use some of those more automated methods of putting down the tracks quickly. In fact, you know, when I'm making a video, when I'm recording a video and then producing it and editing it, sometimes I think, oh, I want a quick little intro into this video. I'm not going to spend 2 hours writing a 30-second, you know, audio intro. I've got a sense of what sound I want. So most likely I would go in, and for something like that, I would go ahead and choose those live loops. I'd pick sort of the feel of it that I want, and then just go with that. Put something together really quickly, particularly if it's just a few seconds and I want it to sound pretty rich. And there we go. So, but that gives you, I guess, a brief introduction into how I compose these songs. And as far as the melodies, like the one I did with the flute, I was just making that up, you know. So when I'm composing my own songs, that's what I usually do, is just playing on the keyboard. There's some chord progressions I like that are familiar for me, and I'll build on those. But generally, that's, you know, that's how it goes. Anyway, that's it. But you know, this all began, music for me began when I was young. I was taking piano lessons, and I continued with it. I've always been interested in music, both my own music and that of other artists. You know, composing and listening to music, but increasingly though, wanting to produce multi-track recordings because of doing the video work. And the video work kind of ties in with when I'm creating websites, either for myself and web content is needed. I need to know photography, I need to know videography, videos need audio. The whole multimedia world, I think most people have found that they need to be kind of proficient in multiple areas to create an end result that's rich with a lot of the content that they're producing. So anyway, hey, I appreciate you watching. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, I'm always happy to get those, and hope you have a great day.